What's going on, Vigilante World? It's your guy Spec Civilian, and we back with another video. First things first, I want to give a shout out to all my viewers, subscribers, and Patreon supporters for making this a home to catch some content before you make a purchase. In today's video, I'm bringing you guys another episode of 75 Live. In today's episode, we're actually going to be going over some of the pros and cons that you get out of the CZ Accu Shadow 2 and the Dan Wesson DWX. Now, we're actually going to be discussing the full-size versions of both of these guns because, honestly, if you just want a gun that's going to be super fun to shoot at just about any time, both of these guns are great options. One thing is to highlight is just how similar these guns really are, so let's get into it. Alright, Vigilante World, let's get into some of the differences you get out of the CZ Accu Shadow 2 RDS and the Dan Wesson DWX. Now, of course, real quick, safety check. So right at the top, let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. I know this is optic ready and this is not, but one thing that's cool about both guns is that you can just go ahead and get this milled to have an optic just like this one. If you do get a CZ Accu Shadow 2 RDS, it's just gonna already come optic ready, so you don't have to worry about sending it off and wasting more time. Also, what's exactly the same are really the actual sights that come with the gun. This Dan Wesson DWX has some amazing fiber optic sights. Of course, it has the black serrated rear with the green dot up front, but easy to pick up. And like I said, pretty much the same exact sights that you would get out of the CZ Shadow 2 or any of the Shadow 2s that pretty much you get out of the box. They're gonna have the same adjustable rear as you would typically get on this out of the box. Like if I were to actually put the plate back on here that has the back sight, then you would actually see that it's truly exactly the same. Since this is an Accu Shadow 2, I can actually take the Accu bushing out and just replace my sight, which makes it very convenient and not have to worry about popping out an actual pin and marring up your slide. Definitely if you're just trying to go from irons to optic or from optic to irons, makes it super easy and super convenient for most people who do just need to just maintain the gun, clean the gun, and make sure that they can have an option on which sights they want to have. So that is one thing that's really cool about the CZ Shadow 2. And they got about a 5-inch barrel on both guns, so you're not really losing anything in terms of that. But one thing about the barrel setups that's very interesting, this is a crossover gun, but this is kind of like a crossover gun as well. Being able to have this classic bushing with a new style grip like this is something that was kind of an old classic like mix-up that people enjoyed. Oddly enough, this is a new style grip with a kind of new style classic look on the actual muzzle. So it's another thing that's kind of interesting because if you look at this, of course, the traditional 1911s had a barrel bushing. Just like this. This is not a 1911, right? This is a CZ Shadow 2. This pays more homage and precision to more of the traditional style of 1911s with having a bushing like this. This is that new classic, right? Where you got that bull barrel almost set up with the crown, nice flush cut with the aluminum guide rod, all the good stuff that you like in the muzzle whenever you're looking at this gun, but it's with that classic slide. So it's just kind of an interesting concept that I just want to bring up to people, that this and this are literally more of the same than they are different. Though aesthetically, they are so different. With the slide, as you see, the serrations are that more modern CZ serration, which is very comfortable, very usable, but the serrations on the Dan Wesson DWX are a little bit more functional and so much more comfortable. It's very interesting how that kind of works with having this coat. Maybe it is the DLC finish that makes it a little bit more comfortable, or maybe it's just how clean the actual serrations are. I do think if you were to have some wet hands or anything like that, or maybe even some muddy gloves, this might be a little less bite than something like this, because for this, you know for a fact this thing is gonna rip your hands up if you end up missing too many times on that. This does still have that top slide serration, which is really cool, definitely, since this does not have any type of front sight. I'm just using the optic because I know for a fact this gun is zeroed and really can shoot without any sights, iron sight specifically. It's really fun to run this gun, and honestly I think if you were to have a setup very similar on here, it would be about the same, because you do still have those serrations right at the top, and you know for a fact if you end up popping this side out and then going ahead and putting an optic on this thing, it has no other thing to be but fun. Of course, this is that traditional CZ Shadow 2 trigger, which everybody loved getting into because it had that super light single action pull. You have this very smooth, very short take up, and then you have a very sweet break. If you think about the overall reset, now of course you have to kind of preload it just like you do any of the other double action, single action guns, but you're right back at some sort of like rolling break wall, and then you can literally just let it go. And again, just to run it back for y'all, you see there was a little bit of take up right here. When you're typically used to running these things, you're used to finding that wall so you can kind of run straight through it. So I do want to kind of show that to people. And of course, you know, you can always run this thing hammer down or in quarter cock and make sure you can have a very smooth pull. And that's one thing that's really cool about this. You can glide through that double action so smooth. Just to show you one more time, again, take up. You can glide through that thing so buttery. And that's one thing that's really to appreciate about that Shadow 2 trigger over having something like this, which is like a crossover 2011 trigger. It's super amazing to have, and it's really cool and really fun, like I said, because you can get so fast with having such a short, you see that take up? Such a short take up. And then super light break. Same thing here. Now, there was absolutely no take up on that. I'm right back at the wall, and I can let it go. So it's actually amazing how you can just, I guess if you wanted to say this is about the take up that you would have, but even then, typically if you're resetting the gun, you're not really feeling any of that. You're feeling the wall, so you can really just run shots super fast. That's the main thing about this trigger and that trigger. You do get the perks of having a double action, but having such a sweet trigger like this is absolutely amazing. I know for a fact when I initially got this out of the box and I was playing with the reset and all that type of stuff, it was a little more lackluster than I would imagine. Since I've been training with this gun and kind of just playing and having some fun with it, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna lie, this thing is done right. So it is truly an Apex style of gun. And I think everybody is to really appreciate what they've done in making something like this mixed into something like this, because you don't really lose anything in the trigger guard. It is a little bit smaller, but it is very much so refined. Of course, the checking right up at the front, really nice undercut, flat trigger guard, squared off, and you have a lot of room in here for any type of glove or anything like that. With the Shadow 2, you got amazing room. I mean, this is a double action gun. You're gonna need some amazing room. Here, you're gonna be able to play with a lot of this, right? Still have the serrations right up at the front, still have a really nice undercut, still have that flat trigger guard, and you have the front and back strap serrations that you get on both guns. The grip is gonna feel almost exactly the same. The grip panels are exactly the same. It's just gonna be truly how the guns feel as far as functionality with that double action and that single action. Because with the ergonomics that you get out of both of these guns, it's absolutely amazing. The safety on here is butter. I love how smooth this is, and it's ambi. I mean, come on now. Super audible, not too stiff. Still has a little bit of a lip on it. Still has a little bit of serrations. Pretty much everything you need in the safety. That left side sucks. It's that same old missing sweep safety that they put on this thing. I don't know why they do this for some of their shadows, but the amazing side, it actually has a very good little gas pedal rail. You can really kind of grip this gun and hold this gun down and make sure you can really pretty much run some rounds wherever you need them to run without this thing flipping up at you. I wish there was an easier replacement for something like this so people could simply just have a gun that's easier to function. So that's one thing I do want to just continue to bring up about the safety on the CZ Shadow 2. Now the slide step on here is absolutely smooth to hit. I don't have to break my grip too much in order to really drop that slide. So that's one thing that makes it a little bit easy. If you do have long enough thumbs, it might not be too bad for you. You're going to definitely have to break your grip for something like this. As you see, my safety is even in the way. So I'm going to have to get that out the way so I can really even drop the slide. Now regardless, both guns I do the same, where if I have the actual slide locked back, then I'll go ahead and drop it with my safe hand so I can make sure that thing can just load around and run exactly how I need it to. The mag release on the Dan Wesson DWX is a bit extended for anybody who does need to hit that. One thing that's actually interesting about this mag release though, I just found it kind of funny. Do you hear that? Like, bro, like, what is that? I actually looked at it. I went ahead and tried to like tighten it, tune it, all that type of stuff, but it just seems like when you lock the actual mag in there, nothing. Outside of that, interesting. With this, not the same thing. You feel a little bit of texture right on the pad, and it's a little bit extended, so not too bad, making sure you can actually release that mag. And they're both really positive. The DWX came with a palm swell grip, so I went ahead and mimicked the palm swell grip, where I have the bogeys that are thin because they came with thin grips. They feel very similar when I get them in the hand, but this still feels like a DWX, and this still feels like a CZ Shadow 2. So they're both high capacity, and you can make sure that both of them are running in whatever match that you have with a lot of of firepower. Now, one thing I do want to highlight about the DWX is that though it takes on that 2011 approach, it still does not have that grip safety, which is one thing I can definitely just appreciate from something that's going to be a crossover gun that needs to be something more updated. I mean, look at this thing. That thing, it looks like the future, definitely of some type of crossover gun. Taking something that gave a futuristic aesthetic like this and put it into something like this with the modern design of a 2011, absolutely genius for this, and something that this is forever going to be able to hold tight on, because this brought something amazing to the table, and being able to have not only a double action, single action trigger that could run as smooth and as fast as anything that was 2011, but also having that new style of frame that you don't even have to worry about a grip safety, and also having that internal slide rail system that allows people to really have some fun with a slightly lower slide, and more so a little bit lighter slide, because you get so much more of a frame wall on the guardrail. With this one, they actually did not take the internal slide rail approach. It was still very much so that traditional slide, which I think is actually kind of cool. I would love to see an internal slide rail on something like this. Any gun that I have from CZ, the thing that I love about these internal slide rails, outside of specifically P07 and the P09, the P01, the Shadow 2 Compact, this one, they all are the same. You lock that slide back, that barrel stays straight as can be, and it's pretty low for what you can see, but regardless, if you're holding this thing straight, you know this thing is going to shoot straight. So that's one thing that I can appreciate about this. This one, it's not exactly the same. Now, of course, you see there's a little bit of an angle on that, a little bit of rise. Now, it's not bad. It just more so resembles all of the more modern styles. Now, the Dan Wilson DWX, it looks like it has like some type of racer hammer, but it's that DWX hammer. It's actually very nice, skeletonized. This does have that traditional CZ skeletonized hammer that works absolutely well. Both of them are very good. One thing that I can say about this gun over this one, of course, is all these notches here. You get so many more options to actually put an actual accessory light on, where you only get one on here. Granted, they're both competition pistols where you might not even need all that, but if you're thinking about having some type of duty purpose for either gun, or even running these in something that is a little bit more open where you can slap a whole bunch of stuff on it, then by all means, it's really cool that the DWX does come with a couple more options to give you that much more subjective design and what you want. That's the main things between these two guns that really makes them different. Other than that, they're truly almost the same gun. They just look so different and feel so different, but really perform absolutely similar. And one thing's for sure is that these things are definitely cousin guns. This starts to feel like this, and this starts to feel like this. It really just depends on which firing system you actually enjoy a little bit better. But that's really the main differences you get out of these guns. Now let's get off the mat and let's talk about it. Back to it. So as you've seen, again, these guns are so similar, and what you get really aids in the performance for either gun. Regardless, both of these things are absolutely beautiful. The black nitride finish that you get mixed with that poly coat on the CZ Accu Shadow 2 is just sweet, since you get this like dual black tone. Also, the DLC finish that you get on the DWX is absolutely stellar, because it looks kind of like an iridescent black. It's super sweet either gun that you get, because they're going to be very beautiful and they're going to perform just like they need to. Now the grip on the guns is pretty much the same because of that angle that they did cross over the DWX to. It's just a TSO / Shadow 2 type of grip. They do feel exactly the same when you are drawing the gun and purchasing the gun and making sure that you can acquire the sights. Other than that, you really don't start telling the difference until you start pulling the trigger and seeing the functionality of the gun, or depending on which gun you typically train with. Since it has a still frame, the same grip angle, and honestly points exactly the same, they have the same exact sight acquisition. Even with the slide serrations right at the top of the slide, they both aid in making sure that you can pick up either the irons or the dot. The biggest thing is truly going to be if you have an optic on either gun. Now, like I said, I know the DWX does not come with an optic ready slide, but you can get it milled like plenty of other people if they actually wanted to. And if you do so, then I know for a fact that gun is going to be so much more fun. With the irons, you can pick up sights so easy. And even with the CZ Accu Shadow 2, with the irons, since they're the exact same sights, you can pick them up exactly the same, and it's so easy. If you're within like a self-defense distance, the CZ has an amazing grouping. I mean, with or without the optic, you can literally be able to get some of the tightest groups, whether you're at, I would say, about 10 yards, 25 yards, and maybe even 60 yards if you have the optic on, because it ends up being so easy to just hit the target. I sent it back about 10 yards or so, and I was able to have a very sweet group. Now keep in mind, I've had my Accu Shadow 2 for a little while now, and since I've had it for a little while, I've been able to get plenty of 10-yard groups, plenty of 25-yard groups. What I will say is, if you're within about 25 yards, that Accu Shadow is crazy. With any of the self-defense tests that I did, all of the groups were absolutely amazing. Again, whether you have the irons or the optic, that group is going to be very nice. That's why literally the Shadow 2 is probably one of the best guns that you can get for the money, because it just performs. And that's one thing that people want if they're spending a lot of money on a gun like a Shadow 2 or a DWX. Now that's not to say the Dan Wesson DWX does not perform. It very much so does. And honestly, for some irons, it makes you feel like you don't even need an optic. Same thing, about 10 yards back, I was able to go ahead and drill in some of the easiest 10-yard groupings that I've ever shot. Literally, the gun is just so fun with the way that that trigger is into this grip system with the DWX. It is just different, and it honestly allows you to have so much fun in just being comfortable shooting the gun. I can only imagine if you actually had an optic on the DWX, it would probably be one of the best and most accurate guns that you can get right out of the box if it was optic ready. But since it's not, you are gonna have to pay a couple $100 to actually get that done. Even when we get back to the CZ Accu Shadow 2, when we're looking at long distance, again, 25 yards, 50 yards, 60 yards, the thing shoots. It just performs. Wherever you're putting that dot, specifically if you have like a SRO or an RMR, it is gonna hit. And even if you're using the iron sights, it's pretty much point of aim, point of impact, so you're still gonna have an amazing group. If you need an optic ready gun, pretty much you can just handle business with that CZ Accu Shadow 2. Even at about 60 yards, I know for a fact, super easy, because again, the trigger is so smooth, so all you have to do is line up that sight and bang. With the Dan Wesson DWX, truly, you do not need an optic. How the gun is set up with the sights, it kind of feels like it already has a very low optic sight. And if you really focus in on that green dot, truly wherever you put that thing, it will hit for some irons. And that's one thing that I can appreciate out of the Dan Wesson DWX, not even having to worry about spending all this extra money to make sure that you have a gun that just performs how you need it to. Now getting back to that trigger with the CZ Accu Shadow 2, is super smooth. It's single action, double action, so it does have that rolling brake, and you do feel that, but you get used to that if you do train with the gun. Now, that Dan Wesson DWX, that 2011 trigger, just different. And honestly, the reset on it is absolutely amazing, to where you can really get some rounds off and know for a fact, super crispy, and it's gonna hit anytime you literally just press the button. Now, of course, with the CZ Accu Shadow 2, you got those 75 mags, and then with the DWX, you actually have those P10 mags, but both of them have amazing capacity. Since they're both still frame, it actually works. All that weight up at the front really allows these guns to really sit. How these guns are designed are absolutely amazing. I think anybody who just goes out and shoots will see how easy it is to have fun with these guns. Double taps on the CZ, absolutely amazing. Again, feels almost exactly the same as the DWX, but the DWX is just different because that trigger allows you to be able to get double taps off that much faster. Truly, the Dan Wesson DWX shows you how it can be better if you put a trigger like that in a CZ Shadow 2 frame. It's just the fact of the matter. That being said, getting into like mag dumps and rapid fire, oh my gosh, the Dan Wesson DWX rips. I mean, literally, you do not need any type of Glock switch or any type of modifying to make the trigger more fast. The gun out of the box is fast as is. I'm telling you, you can literally go, put some rounds in this thing, and let it rip. The CZ Accu Shadow 2 just has a couple more limitations with that single action, double action reset. It just gives you a couple limits to allow you not to go as fast as something like a 2011 trigger. Again, reality of the function. Now the mag swaps on the CZ Accu Shadow 2 are absolutely amazing. Super easy, whether you have a mag well or not, you know for a fact you can feed in those mags and get some rounds off. Very similar thing with the Dan Wesson DWX, whether you have a mag well or not, the mags feed in super well, and you know for a fact you can throw those things in there and get some rounds off. Of course, if you do have a mag well for either one, it's gonna feed that much better. Now the reliability on both guns is absolutely amazing. The CZ Accu Shadow 2 I've had for about 2 years or so now, and it has given me no failures, so I have absolutely no complaints with that gun, as well as the Dan Wesson DWX. Though it's new and it came out this year, I know for a fact it's gonna be great because as is, I took this thing out bone dry and it still has given me no issues, so I know for a fact the gun will be absolutely amazing. Now the MSRP on the CZ Accu Shadow 2 is $18.99, and then the MSRP on the Dan Wesson DWX is $19.99. One thing that I will say is for the $100 that you save in getting an AccuBushing with an optic ready gun, The CZ Accu Shadow 2 is absolutely amazing buy, and I think if anybody is trying to split hairs, getting one or the other for this pretty much same cost, that's probably one way that I would lean, because it does just give you a couple more perks in having an optic ready gun that is not only just optic ready but universal, to where if you have whatever optic that you want, you can literally make sure that you can run that. Now again, you can get the Dan Wesson DWX milled, but that's when you are going to be shooting your bank in the pocket. So those are going to be the main differences there between the CZ Accu Shadow 2 and the Dan Wesson DWX. If you did like this video, definitely make sure you smash that like button. If you have any comments or anything like that, definitely make sure you drop them down below. I would love to hear what you guys think about the CZ Accu Shadow 2 versus the Dan Wesson DWX. Other than that, all I gotta say is stay safe, get some ammo. Till next time, y'all.